Hi, guys. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? We're back. Oh, my gosh. So sorry. Usually we have, intervention where there's government intervention or what have you. The
random often occurrences of interruption.
Human interruption, and I'm so sorry. So, yeah, please continue.
So where did we leave off? About where I was, why I called you was to notify you and let everyone know that I cited the 5th District, Georgia, Nancy Schaefer in a notice to the 7th Circuit, and cited how she brought the abuses of this title program that we're fighting against and the corruptions in the judiciary to the attention of the federal government in as early as 2007, and noticed them of her recommendations, and that since they've done nothing to change the manner in which these programs have been changed in management, the way they're supervised, and the courts are trying to convey these immunities to these states who have agreed to a financial contract with terms and conditions that they're not even being held to. So it's just this open slush fund for baby trafficking, and
I think I even mentioned to you that, they have these recommendations before them already, and also the succeeding audit information that have been.
Well, they have lots of audits apparently that aren't being registered or something by independent states. Like, there are actually some states that are concerned with the activities and are actually tracking this. Because I don't even know that. You see, what people understand is the Child Protective Services agencies and everything running that, the implementation, this is where it doesn't matter if the executive branch of the state is concerned, all they can do is audit it, because guess what? The Title IV program through the Department of, the Social Security Administration, HHS, as it comes through the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, that particular program is monitored 100% and controlled and made sure that it's in compliance by the judiciary, 100%. That's the only branch of state that has been given authority to supervise these people, and the courts are the corruption. These bar unions are literally open.
Yeah,
but you understand that the executive branch, the judiciary of the state, can't really do anything except mandate how they can take children in their state fashion, which usually ends up being arresting marijuana users and, just breaking in people.
Obviously they're targeting the people that are on drugs and raising
children. But as far as the implementation and the making sure that the federal statutes are being complied with in a legal sense is put 100% into the hands of the Supreme Courts of the states for implementation.
Let's just clarify, okay? Drug abuse and the removal of children. Let's talk about neglect.
Well, let's talk about this when it relates to marijuana. Marijuana is being put along with meth it's actually marijuana cultivation. Actually, I think it's just marijuana use and marijuana cultivation. Okay, they've put them with meth, and they've classified, I think Trey Gowdy just did a thing on this. Marijuana is classified as a class 1 drug, and cocaine's a class 2, and meth is a class 2. So they're out there busting people and using it to basically destroy the families who are bucking the unlawful oppression of a treaty that bars us from exporting and cultivating our number one product before the Federal Reserve Act. That's what people have to understand about marijuana. They're even using that, right? Right. So they're using that law
that says that it's a Here's the thing.
But I'm just saying. But my point of the fact is, though, is the legislatures
can be addressed. It can be.
Well, I understand that, but that's not even the point when it comes to Title IV. I'm trying to
system. But what the problem is they're perverting this law to jump to the conclusion.
But it's designed to be that.
And what I'm saying is what I'm trying to. The argument I'm trying to make is it doesn't always equal neglect.
It has nothing to do with neglect. It has to do with picking and choosing what children can get more money on the market of baby trafficking. They aren't going around. Okay, CPS isn't removing this is all you'd ever have to do to audit CPS. You go into a CPS and you have these claims categorized into what type of abuse, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing. And what were the reactions to CPS? They changed the placement. They did this. I'm going to tell you, they return in this family alone. In a previous generation, they returned people who were reportedly being sexually abused and physically molested on a regular basis, and they returned them back to the family within 2 months, and they were actually being harmed. They're taking, and then but see what that does is then the next generation, pursuant to the statutes and the standards, actually they're not even the statutes. This is how CPS sees it. If you were ever a child that was being supervised for your harm in CPS's, like under their tutelage, like you were in the system. If you have a CPS claim, they just automatically consider you a bad parent, take your kid away. They're cultivating. That's the RICO. The point I'm trying to make about when it gets to the states is the judiciary of the state is given 100% authority to oversee and implement a legislative act, which I personally think is unconstitutional. Personally, myself, okay?
I have to say I agree with you. However, my point is this.
Okay, let me get to the point about marijuana and meth and in these drugs, okay? What they're doing is they're actually reaping the rewards of massive drug addiction, which is in many ways cultivated by our own counter-government, which I think we all know, okay? And at least it plays a role in it. And, I think the CIA's introduction of cocaine into the United States, their role in that is pretty well established. I thought it was. So, that there are systems of government that have corrupted the social systems of the lower classes and just pouring drugs in and saying that we got a drug war. It's the left hand feeds the right hand and vice versa. If you create a drug war, you can have the rise of the military state by bringing the militarized police with heavier more armaments, affecting drug wars. It's a plan. That's what these are all cultivated plans.
Educate the lower class that this is what is occurring to them.
I think they know that. I mean, I've talked to very older.
We try to educate, but
I don't think we need to educate the people who've been victimized for longer than some of us have. I think that they've just run down to the last rung. They're down to white women now. They're down to white men and white women. They're running out of color.
I mean, and most definitely the middle class, because they're trying to eliminate
But here's the funny thing: they've always come after the whites. They start the whites that came here to escape persecution. They act like everybody.
I think that the Mexican, African American, Black, generation, this generation in particular, doesn't know about this, and nobody needs.
Well, I understand that, but I can't re-educate an entire mass.
You say that. I know that you say that they know, but the thing is I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. Like, there is a real war on, and it's a whole informational.
This is what I just was talking to Ray about. These people use hidden wars. They use alchemy. They use poisoning. They use assassins. Absolutely. They use subterfuge. They use controlling of states through political. This is Machiavellian, art of war, Sun Tzu. This is heavy. These people have been influencing our history for thousands of years, and you don't even know who they are, folks. We do now because they all use our money. They're being paid or trafficking. Their finger is somewhere on a dollar bill. You know?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this divine providence, and that's how, that's kind of how I see it. Our founding fathers and the people before them, and the people who've been persecuted, for believing that all men should be free and following the law of Yeshua, that we don't have kings on this earth, that we have greater creator that gives us the knowledge of right and wrong, and it's the man that's corrupted and the statesmen that are corrupted. So we're going to be self-governing.
A huge portion of the people are being deprived of this knowledge, and it's not being.
I agree with that.
Mainstream.
That's contrived as well. I think you and I both know we have a very contrived educational state system. People forget why. People forget. Okay.
We have a contrived media, mainstream media system that is compromised.
I just read some meme. I I don't know if this is true, but I just read some meme that the Pope just told the press that to lie as a press member was a sin, and he's actually right. Because in the Bible, lawlessness is a sin. So being lawless is a sin. That is what a sin is lawless.
This is the thing. A lot of times they put the truth out there, and then they immediately have trolls that are there to discredit it in the comments. So people will assume, oh, well, this is quote unquote fake news. Folks, I have news for you. It's not fake news. It's not discredited. And a lot of times it's actually very factual.
Well, what's funny about that, though, is I don't really think the press is part of his titles of nobility. So why is he slamming the press, which I don't just necessarily agree with? But if you're going to start and have a speech about who's sitting under your tutelage,
Yeah, there's huge funding for these trolls to go online and just immediately discredit real news.
I know.
And this
I'm going to give everybody an insight on this.
On this religion as well. I just want to tell the people that are.
Well, some of it's AI. A lot of it's AI, Amelia. A lot of it's AI.
They have to put the truth out because it's a part of their religion, quote unquote. And then what they do is they hire trolls to immediately comment underneath all of these publications.
That's called plausible deniability.
Yeah, it's called plausible deniability. And
cigarette science.
It can be researched in
what they're doing is they're working the angle. They're working the angle of beyond a shadow of a doubt, and this is very interesting. So, because I want to talk about a couple things, I want to talk about using Nancy Schaefer in the Seventh Circuit notice, because I think it's important, because she set the boundary for when they can say we didn't know.
I love Nancy Schaefer.
I want to make sure that everyone is very clear that Nancy Schaefer, in my mind, was assassinated, and her husband were assassinated. So that's and just because of knowing what she had been doing, and
I want to be clear as well. FBI assassination.
I don't know who did it. I mean, there's so many people. I think that there are people in the CIA that work for the FBI and the NSA. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised. These people are just.
I can't be factual, but look, we have William Wagner, who is an alternative media reporter who reports for the On Second Thought TV show.
He did a whole stint on her,
on the he was on site, and he's
totally showed you.
You can go on YouTube and you can tune into his TV show On Second Thought. I think it's something, if you're really interested in Nancy Schaefer, the senator that held a seat.
And I have a couple of her speeches on my YouTube channel, because I just think it should be preserved, and people should pull her, because she put it out there into the media, and even gave speeches after she lost her Senate seat about the corruptions of. She didn't shut up. She kept espousing very loudly that children were being trafficked in this program as early as 2007. So they're culpable at this point. They've been allowing this to happen for 10 years. They've left the judiciary in charge of it, and that speaks to, and this is their plausible deniability, and I noticed that, and I'm going off because I watched the 5-minute. I don't know if anyone's had the chance to watch this, but if you see anything coming across YouTube or the news channel about how the Congress, these people who are interviewing the district court judge selection under Trump, had never tried a case, never done a deposition by himself, never did a criminal case, never was tried it as a prosecutor on any side of the bench, like he's never been in court, and they want this guy to be a district judge, mm-hmm. and he couldn't answer, which what I would consider, if he had been a judge, he would know these, and if he had been operating as a judge, he would have to learn these certain definitions of certain disciplines and maxims and stuff for evidence and such. But then you hearken back to me, and I'm like, well, I'm not surprised by that, because in Title 28 in Section 506, it's assistant attorney generals, and you go through the whole thing, and near the end of it, it's let's see, first paragraph, top table, and I'm looking at the 1993 edition, because each edition gives you more keys to the world, really. But the 1993 edition of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and Rules is really just full of because it has the older annotation still. But in like the fifth paragraph, it says, The words learned in the law are omitted as unnecessary. Such a requirement is not made of the Attorney General, United States attorneys, or United States judges. See Reviser's Note, 28 U.S.C. 501, 1964 edition. But don't you know, when you go back in Title 28, 501, that was just cited in this 1993 506 subsection, that those notes that they cross-reference are gone and not there for you to read. But what they just told you is judges are not even obligated to know the law. So now you know why
we have an epidemic of
well, no, they've given themselves plausible deniability. They're even
they don't know the law.
They don't know anything about the law. They don't even know what law is. I mean, if you were to ask an attorney what law is, they'd go statutes. Well, no, it's not, dude. Oh, it's it's not.
No, and it's not funny. I'm laughing,
but it just the absurdity.
It's so completely disturbing. Lotus.
Well, especially since the term learned in the law is required in the common law to even be on a jury. In order to even be a juror member, you have to be learned in the law and common law, and the judge definitely has to be learned in law and has to be able to be a reference to the law. Because see, what common law judges were is they were people who had read case law and could reference things and knew where to go research. They were like law clerk minds. They were the minds of law clerks.
But we don't have that right now.
I mean, oh my gosh, these people! I'm
going to interject here, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting you because this is profound, and I absolutely agree with what Nancy Schaefer was presenting, and I find it really ironic. I want to interject something really quick. I find it really ironic that she was getting ready and preparing to go before the criminal tribunal. However, we have an issue with people in the judiciary and within the Bar Association that do not know the law. They're just crummy.
Well, they don't know the law, and they're taught that they're just supposed to be ens legis, which means follow the statutes. And they're not following the statutes.
No, they're following cronyism and political rights.
And union, and hide criminality within their union, allow it to cultivate, be party to it, watch it make money off the system. Because I want to get to the bigger issue on this, because the agenda for this was the institutionalized, the agenda of child trafficking within the institutions of state. And I was just perusing the internet, and I often look into stuff, and I was just watching this actual video on YouTube, and it's a November 15th video from this year, and the title is ex-CIA Robert Steele, and he's talking to these people about what's going on in the Trump coup and stuff. But they're talking about the corruption and interjection, and they actually bring up child trafficking, and it's an important conversation because they're starting to talk about how child trafficking is an integrated part of this coup and this corruption and stuff. But then he said this guy who's talking is supposed to be an ex-CIA dude. That's this ex-CIA dude who's telling everybody the skinny out of the altruism of his heart, okay? This is supposed to be a big level CIA dude, and he says this. He says, well, what they're looking for is babies that don't have birth certificates, meaning babies not on the rolls. That's how Social Security would call that, and then they would have babies that drop off the rolls. So people not on rolls are people that don't have birth certificates, don't have Social Security cards, to the extent that they don't have a legal entity that's been created for them that government or the Social Security Administration is tracking. Then there are people who drop off rolls, which means they just disappear. Their Social Security number never shows up in benefits as a dependent from a parent. They don't die. They don't know where they go. They just kind of disappear, right? The number is never seen in commerce again or through IRS task base or anything like that. So he's sitting there saying that the whole key with the baby trafficking, and why I think he thinks it's not so big, is because he says there's only two sources of get babies without birth certificates in the United States. And he says these are the two: foreign babies being trafficked in illegally, and people in the United States that are so immorally reprobate that they would sell their babies and don't have them in hospitals. And I'm like, this guy cannot truly be from the CIA, because I'm going to tell you there's at least two very large means in which children are brought into this country that are from this country are either not put on the rolls or dropped off the rolls, okay? And it's all through systems of state. The one where they're not necessarily even put on the rolls is for women who are pregnant in prison. In prison in the state of Ohio, women who are pregnant in prison are coerced, forced through threat of being put in the hole to attend meetings with adoption agencies that offer them $3,000, as we've been reported to at least, for if they will sell their babies out of prison and have the babies in prison and then give them to these, quote, private adoption agencies. Well, guess what? Those private adoption agencies, out of the mouth of Dan Shook. He was the director of the Ohio CPS and Job and Family Services with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. So he was the director of the CPS programs. That's who I was directed to. Mm-hmm. He said, I told him about this. He said, well, we don't track those agencies. I don't even know that we even keep a registry of those going to prisons. And I'm like, so who does? Only the warden. So there are these people that are being allowed to go to prisons, okay, and talk to women into buying their babies. The organizations don't have to register. They don't have to prove a licensure. There's no mechanism to make sure these people are even organizations, lawfully that they're not just groups of pedophiles or fakes. We don't know. Mm-hmm. No one's monitoring it. And the wardens are allowing these people in. Well, I'm going to say that reeks of kickbacks and payoffs. And then these babies are being born. And these babies are being born. And the babies are being born in the criminal justice system, and they're being handed out of the criminal justice system through these prisons into these people's hands.
And we don't listen. Baby trafficking scheme. Absolutely.
Right, but we don't even listen. We don't even know if they're being tracked to the point where they're even giving them registered birth certificates. So that's the babies not even on the rolls, potentially and probably being taken from every prison in this United States that are not being monitored. And babies, we don't know where they're going. We don't know where the babies of mothers in prison who give their babies to the state custody necessarily are going, people. We don't even know if they're ever given birth certificates or they're ever tracked. We don't know. As far as I know, they are not. So that's not even on the rolls, babies.
We've had a guest on the show who is a part of the nonprofit Shared Hope International. And folks, I'd like you to check that out. Shared Hope International. It involves the baby trafficking that's going on in our prison system. We've had guests on John Meehan.
They're just broodmare farms. They're just broodmare farms at this point in time. And they're cultivating, and that goes back to the marijuana and the meth. They have to clip these minor drug users for this stuff so they can take their babies because they're too poor to take the $5,000 retainer, and then they just clip them in and out on small drug use. Well, the women get out and they have babies, they get pregnant, they get clipped again. They basically just turn these prisons into broodmares for nonviolent offending drug users.
And they're turning these women into
state
breeders.
They're making
because every time they go into jail, they get caught.
Right. Exactly.
What they do is they get a couple $3,000. They get a down payment on an apartment.
They get it on their books. They put the money on the book.
They get the money, and then they have to go back into jail for probation or what have you. And they're pregnant again because they've got a boyfriend and they've been in the and it's a turnstile cycle. And then when you're in jail, they immediately try to recruit you.
And then you have to think at the effect of these women have these babies taken from them. They're just
I want to mention
then it just cycles the drug use. I mean, it just cycles the drug.
I mean, look. I want to mention something else, okay? And I want to mention this because there are so many programs available to the male prison population.
How about even tattoos?
Yeah. And it's not even funny, okay? There are so many programs available to them. So when they go out on the outside, I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to get to a point. There are
because we can do a whole show on the inequity.
There are so many programs available to them. But what is available to the women in prison is a joke.
Well, I know that. I've been there. I'm saying we could do a whole show on the inequity.
A whole lot better, and I am so willing to do it. I'm willing to do a whole series on this because
it's criminal. It's criminal about how women are treated in prison.
It's about making them into breeders. Absolutely trafficking the babies.
And then they stick their men in the prison.
This is the thing. I am absolutely behind everything you just said. And believe me, I have done shows.
Yeah, but that's contrived. It's designed that way. The failure of oversight is
exactly.
That's
That's what I'm pointing out. And I'm absolutely.
And some of these, guys, some of these prisons are privately owned. You understand that? By foreigners. Do you understand what I'm saying? That this is not this. So this CIA dude wants me to believe that he doesn't know that babies are cultivated in this very country. That guy's a total shill. I'm like,
I want to ask you something. So someone like me personally, who is a single mother, low income, or considered quote unquote low income and uneducated, if you will, considered that.
Never called you uneducated.
Is targeted. No, let's just say the police have an aid, they have a thing out for me or whatever.
Oh my gosh, they're targeted horribly.
They're trying to target me and get me into jail. And they get me into a cell, okay? No, I'm going somewhere with this. Follow me. They get me into a cell. And inside that cell, they've had me maybe 1 or 2 times for misdemeanors or nothing that usually gets dismissed because I've never been charged with anything.
Or prostitution to pay your drug habit. Call it that. I don't care what you call it.
Nothing like that even. Nothing like that.
It doesn't have to be. Well, I don't even consider that extreme.
Like that. But say you're an attractive single woman.
Right. Doing her thing. Gets a little buzz on the weekend.
Street, trying to get a job, whatever. And this is, okay, I'm getting somewhere with this. Follow me. So you end up in jail for 24 hours while they can, cycle you or what have you. And while you're in jail, they're charging you with little misdemeanor crimes, a ticket, crossing the street, or whatever. Okay? Humor me right now. And you're in jail you're in a holding cell with other women that are telling you, I have this great boyfriend. He can help you get out of your crime. He can pay it off. Oh, yes.
They actually have bond runners. I mean, the setup, the whole judiciary, the whole criminal No, I'm going to tell you this because I've lived through it.
So systemic, and people don't quite realize how systemic it is.
I'm going to tell them how systemic it is. I've lived through it. The entirety of the criminal justice system is racketeering upon the poor, the disenfranchised, and the people that we have allowed to lay fallow in our society. And they are warring upon our women and children. You have fascist cops who, not all cops, but there are cops that go and pick up babies without warrants, people, and they do dirty work, and they steal babies from families in the middle of the night with guns. They're warring upon your women and children and walking into people's houses and stealing babies and disappearing them out of prisons. And the other place where they're dropping off the rolls, which is the other point, the biggest source of baby trafficking in this country, is through Title IV programs, E and D probably, maybe D, but definitely E. In E, if the baby, my mother, who is a 30-year veteran, who her job was to look for criminal fraud in federal systems and entitlement programs such as Social Security, I think 3, 16, and 18. She told me the numbers she worked in. She was an expert at fraud. She has read Title IV and says that it was clear that the manner in which they designated that if the foster family adopts the baby or whenever a baby is adopted out or passed from permanent termination of custody from a mother or father or family or whatever to some ex-person, a creation of state, a family, a foster system, people that wanted to adopt the baby. If those people do not take federal benefits, they never track that baby ever again. So the baby drops off the rolls. It is designed that children who are conveyed through Title IV drop off the rolls unless they are the families apply for federal or state granted programs through the federal government. Meaning that if you're a baby trafficker or you're a pedophile, you never file and the baby just disappears. See, so it's the dropping off the roll. So this CIA guy who in this disclosure about Trump and stuff is talking about the only way to get babies and birth certificates and all this stuff. It's not about the birth certificates, folks. They can take a baby and never give it a birth certificate through the federal and the state. I don't know about federal, but state prison systems in this state, they certainly can. And they can take a baby and make it disappear, even if it has a social security number, through the courts by the termination of custody. It's like the baby just dies in the system, okay? So there are other major sources of the trafficking of the children that they're getting in this massive child trafficking within our nation that is happening within the systems of our state, and it's designed to do it. These people intentionally created these lapses in oversight. Nancy Schaefer exposed them in 2007 and showed that there were massive lapses in contrived oversight that needed corrected. And there are 3 recommendations that I remember. She said that every CPS agency needed audited immediately, because I'm going to tell you, I have a concern that there was a death in the CPS system by these people down here in Highland County a long time ago, when the administrator Koss was a prosecuting attorney. And from the records that I researched, he when a woman brought up the director of the program was going to made the recommendation that 2 of her employees be looked at for criminal prosecution for neglect in their role of the death of the baby. When he was a prosecutor, this is now the common pleas judge, instead of prosecuting those 2 people, who the director of CPS, who was like a 20-year veteran, okay, that means she's been there from the get-go, guys, since Title IV was probably created. She was director of that whole county that whole time. When she said these 2 people neglected in their duty and a baby died, they fired her. They didn't, and I don't know if that baby's death was ever investigated. My concern is there are babies dead through CPS hands more than we know. So she said a full audit of CPS. She said that no child should be allowed to be taken from a family without a jury trial. Without a jury trial, folks, which is exactly what should happen. These people are having their babies seized by proclamations that are never substantiated by facts. They are allowing impermissible evidence. They are allowing ex parte evidence. They're having hearings with women without attorneys. This is just literally baby trafficking, folks. And the other thing she said that is they needed to de-incentivize it. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what I did with this notice to the Seventh Circuit. I told them the United States Corporation, which is merely a conglomeration of 50 transferring utilities registered in the states. Each one of those transferring utilities is an attachable, suable entity, a public franchise. I don't care if it's foreign registered. Most of them say they're foreign corporations. The fact of the matter is if that transferring utility is the functioning body of how these states are being paid, or the funds from those states are being trafficked out of this country. And in 2007, Nancy Schaefer said it needed to be defunded because of corruption and child trafficking, and they haven't done it. Guess what? They've been paying and contracting for baby trafficking since 2007 as a corporation. And those states who've been receiving those funds after they were been noticed, because I can prove in this state where they're grossly violating federal law, and all they've done in this case, Ren, is time after time, court after court, hold to their union instead of putting those criminals that have harmed multiple children and families and babies in these counties down here. Instead of putting them into jail, they have allowed them to continue to torture those families and those people in those counties through their corrupt judicial criminal cabals of baby traffickers. I mean, it's really heinous. When people get their head around what's really happening in this country when it comes to babies being trafficked by people in their state, they are going to be furious. And I mean furious. Because it is just gross neglect in the highest levels of government, people. And that's what Trump is exposing. I promise you. And if he doesn't expose it, I'll call him out. Because he has an obligation as the executive of this corporation to make sure that the people don't pay for criminal activities to the states or in the states, or the acts of corrupt foreign agents that have cooed our judiciary and are just a baby trafficking machine. I mean, the courts are merely human trafficking instruments at this time, folks. That's all they are. It is Babylonian slave trade for the value of our negotiable instruments. That we have a value. They're trading this like commodities, people. They're trading us like commodities in our treasury notes, and they're physically trading people in the judiciary, out of state custodies with pregnant babies out of prisons. They're trafficking mothers and fathers and splitting up families. It's the new Holocaust. It's the new slavery.
It really is. When we say Holocaust, we don't say this, and we're not minimizing.
No, these are millions of babies. This isn't millions of Jews. This is millions of babies.
This isn't millions of Jews. Something happened in the past. This is happening right now. And
well, when I think of Jews, I think of 6 million adults. I'm thinking, imagine 6 million babies. That's like probably 1 year's take for
split
people.
From their families, displaced all over the country. We have, I mean, this is beyond.
But they're kidnapping the children of our impoverished classes.
Yes.
They are kidnapping the children of our, even middle-class families are having their children kidnapped. The only people aren't having their children kidnapped are the rich, powerful, and wealthy and connected to the coup.
Yes.
Who have attorneys that they can hire. Probably the same, firms that are colluding and helping them, traffic the babies in some way, shape, or form.
My Himalayan cat is loving you right now. He is just so in love with Lotus Justice because you're telling the truth.
Well, this is the truth, folks. This is the truth. And then you think, okay, I'm going to tell you something, because if these people in the judiciary of the United States or anywhere else in this country that call themselves judges or attorneys, I don't care what you want to call yourself, if you make your money from the criminal justice system, period. If you think that by the proclamation in Title 28, 506, that someone's saying that the judges and the administrators and all these people that are supposed to be imposing the constitutional law upon the states don't have to be learned in the law, and they just profess that they don't have to be learned in the law, who gave you that right? Who gave you that right to say you don't have to be learned in the law, and then try to tell me that I can't file a claim for a child? I can't file a habeas for a child because I don't have a license, a fictitious license to practice law that you don't even know what it is. You've exempted yourself from being learned in the law and then say you're licensed to practice.
Here's the thing. I think that more so than ever, despite our political differences and how we feel personally,
we're tired of a judiciary that doesn't know the law.
Exactly.
And it's just a criminal cabal of human traffickers. That's what we're tired of.
Ground zero issue that we cannot be using our children and human beings as an economic
funding system for a government.
At all.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
So,
I wonder how many treasury notes, because judicial bonds are wrapped by the treasury too. Well, imagine how many treasury notes are wrapped by the judiciary.
We're going to keep doing these shows so that we can educate the public, because we need to keep putting this out there over and over again until people
But this is the RICO. This is the biggest part of this. It's the RICO. Here's the RICO.
This isn't a RICO. This is the thing that people don't
understand. But this is where the RICO comes in from the bar.
They want instant gratification. People need to understand and grasp that this is a global issue.
They're trafficking children all over the globe for these people.
When the Clintons came into office, Bill Clinton established the ICMP, which is the International Index for Missing Persons. And then Hillary Clinton, who was then a lawyer, she represented the Child Protective Services at that time, and she implemented the right to lie through legislation using establishment law.
Right.
Then they established a branch of the Child Protective Services on every military base globally that we have. So we have a global child trafficking network.
And guess who the military defers to when it comes to the enforcement of military code and the law? The statutes of the state of Ohio, as the bar unions of the state of Ohio tell the federal military it should be implemented. They have left the states, even the military, 100% free in their judiciary. And in this case, with Title IV, they have continued to fund a program that they were noticed in 2007 was basically fraught with baby trafficking, human trafficking, criminal corruption, and all this stuff. They've done nothing for 10 years. Now, you know who was in office for those 10 years? Okay? And this existed before Obama, and it existed before, I think that the baby trafficking, as we know, Boys Town, the Nebraska, that was in the Bush era, you know, the CIA formation era and the Hoover era. This is the new one. They've moved it to we kicked them out of the private sector. And all they did was infiltrate the public sector and have moved themselves into these gross little sections, these specially created sections. And you can see the contrived criminality in it. And here's the deal. You sit here and you have these legislatures that you've elected, okay, to fix the ills of society because they keep raising your taxes, right? You see your paycheck going down. You see the world degrading and all these problems and drug addiction. Oh, my gosh, nothing seems to ever get fixed. Why would it get fixed? Because the people running your legislature are the same bar union members making a killing on the other side of all the fake statutes and all the things they're not fixing. If the legislature doesn't fix the criminality and doesn't fix the drug addiction and just starts making more criminal statutes of things that aren't crimes because there's no real party of interest who's been harmed or nothing like that. These state little, how can a thing be harmed? They can't, okay, folks? You know, you have to have a real victim. So pretty soon they're going to make it, they're going to start taking babies away because you cross the streets the wrong way or you don't pay a misdemeanor traffic ticket like that woman they did, I don't know what state it is, I should remember it because it was egregious. They're using the judicial system, especially when it comes to like marijuana and stuff, they're using it as a political tool to target the very people that are going against the government with right. They're literally taking babies from people who are using legal marijuana allowed by state statute. How is that possible? How is that possible? Okay? Exactly. How can that be possible? You know, that these are things, and they're leaving these corrupt state governments that are making millions of dollars. Remember, in Ohio, in a letter from their own Supreme Court Justice Maureen O'Connor, she admitted that they, through the programs, got $232 million in 2014. That's a lot of money. If they don't ever make sure that their people aren't doing criminal, why would they care if they're fraught with criminality and baby trafficking when the state made $232 million from the federal government? And that's just on the books, folks. That's not all the foster systems and stuff that can apply for Medicaid, Medicare funding and all that stuff. People don't understand the RICO of this. They don't understand the RICO of prisons, that they get free prisoners.
About the Trump administration is that Trump is willing to affect this RICO, and I think people need to get behind it.
Oh, heck yeah, because your government is literally milking the American people and has enslaved them through corruptions within the judiciary and the bar unions.
You don't stand up and you don't speak out.
This is fascism, folks. This is fascism. This is fascism. Okay.
Then you're complicit as well. I mean,
well, it's fascism. We're in Weimar Republic. You have okay.
You know, so many people want to stay quiet. They want to stay politically, quote unquote, correct. Well, you know what? You're complicit then.
It's the same thing that German people were faced with, you know, and I've talked to some of those survivors that were children during World War II. One of my good friends, her parents were children during World War II, during the whole situation with the concentration camps, which do exist. I don't know who went in there. I can't speak to that. I did. But they talk about that they didn't know. They say that we didn't know, and they may not have known because they didn't have the internet.
But however, you have to understand,
but we do.
knows about FEMA.
We do. We do know.
Everybody knows about the FEMA camps. Everybody's hypothesizing.
Everybody knows. Everybody is starting to understand there's some problems.
There's no excuse for our generation.
No. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. And it's by the same thing. There's this favorite note of history. Everything that Hitler did was legal. The German people have a fabulous constitution, okay? But if your judiciary's in coup and it makes things legal that aren't lawful, and it's allowing the state to do things that are against the principles of the guidance of the people, and no one's checking them. See, but in Germany, they don't have the fourth branch. They don't have the right to bear arms. They don't have the right to free speech and all these rights. Okay? They did, in that respect, the German people aren't prone to rising up with guns and overthrowing their government.
We have these we have these tools available to us.
Exactly. We have the law. How about we have the law? How about we have the law?
Everybody shares this podcast, and we're like 4 minutes over. But you know
okay, well, we have the law. Let's implement the law, and let's be clear about what's really happening. And right now, this government is lawless. If the judiciary is going to allow itself to be cooed like this,
continue to allow these people to walk free with no repercussions at all whatsoever.
And their agreement. This is the thing that really bugs. And this is my
system anymore. Do we? I mean,
but here's the point. Here's the bigger point. The point is this, and this is my mother as a 30-year fraud investigator. The states agreed to follow the mandates of the federal guidelines in order to get funding. So the federal government is allowing the states to not only traffic our babies unchecked and unregulated, but they are allowing the states to steal money from us. They are defrauding the American people by allowing the states to act as they're acting and stealing our children and destroying our families and destroying our societies, and they're paying them to do it.
They're raping the Social Security, folks. They're
raping a lot of things. We are having so much money stolen from us right now.
Yeah.
And our children, it's not just the children, but it's the degradation of society. They are trying to destroy the family unit, okay? That is designed to do it.
It's terrible.
It's a horrible social construct, and we need to get
this on the portal to justice, and we've been educating the people and the people that are tuning in and actually listening.
So keep fighting, folks. Keep fighting.
Yeah, and
please tell you, it's big.
Keep getting informed and keep
fighting
big. On these issues. It's so big.
It's international banking conglomerations affecting judicial fascism.
The FBI knows it. The FBI knows it. They know, and they've actually, quote unquote, said that it involves the big banking system, and
of course it does, because the whole banking system is based upon it. That's a whole show too. But that doesn't mean they get to traffic babies.
Economy back over.
Yeah,
to a just system.
Otherwise, right. Well, I love your forum. I love your forum.
If we don't have a judiciary, we don't have anything in this country, folks.
Yeah, if you don't have a judiciary, you're going to be real we'll have a judiciary. It's called the people, because we still have that right, and we still have that crown. I promise you, give me. There are people that could reconstruct the common law courts in this government, in this country, in a very short order. We are not unknowing of how to do it. It's a matter of funding and not having corruption shut us down every time we try to get it done under the law. So that's not a problem in my mind. And once this stuff just turns, because if this commercial judiciary, because you're talking about the private law, you're talking about the public laws of commerce. That's what they're in charge of. They're not in charge of the private laws of commerce between us, and the private laws of commerce between us create public law. We create states with those private commerce laws. That's called the first Constitution, and the laws of equity in men and common law. So if they're not going to serve that purpose, we'll fix them. We'll fix them by bringing them back to the common law. But we
need your voice, Lotus, and I hope you come back on the show, because we need so many other voices speaking out, because if it's not just me and Lotus,
well, I love my country, and I'm not going to
let voices speaking out, everybody, because
I love my country
out together in unison, they cannot shut us all up.
Nope. No, and I love my country, and I can't stand what they've done to it. I can't stand what they've done to some really good people that I love, and I know it's a pervasive problem in this country, and I will not let this blight on on the good American people happen anymore. I'm tired of my government eating the substance of the people with the same people that we kicked out the first time.
Amen. Amen. And I hope you come back on the portal to justice. I have to wrap it up. We're over our
Sorry to get so heated, but man, these people.
Yeah, I love it though. I love it. I don't want to discourage you. I absolutely, Live with Lotus is a ongoing thing, folks.
I need people to see the bigger picture here, because they're not telling you the whole story, and I want people to be prepared, because it's really ugly and it's really big, and I just want people really to pray.
So many issues I want to talk to you about. I mean, there's also the issue with Comey, and
Jennifer and Angel Marcos and all that.
Whether or not we're going to indict him. Holy cow. I mean, how can we have a justice system?
Comey is tangentially attached. Comey is tangentially attached to the Philippines, along with the Bushes, through the quote Angel Marcos dude. And I knew that. I called 2 years ago.
We're supposed to be the superpower. We're supposed to be. Our legal system is integral to the U.S. justice.
Right.
Reputation globally.
I think that most of the worlds know that the American justice system involves the first, the right to bear arms. I mean, the Second Amendment. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, let's throw that in as well. Well, listen, have
a good one. Thank you for the forum. Everyone, be vigilant.
Very welcome.
And keep pushing your government to stop hiding these things. They need to be exposed in all their gross decadence and disgust, so that the American people understand how poorly they have allowed their government to become when it comes to the implementation.
People are encouraging me to take down my post about Comey being indicted.
Well, who did? Facebook made you?
Oh, well, no, they were just encouraging me to take it down. A lot of people.
Well, they didn't want you to predict anything, did they?
Well, I'm trying to really keep tabs on this issue, and
he needs indicted. He needs indicted. He did commit federal crimes. I don't care who he is.
It's high treason, if you ask me, and
There's lots of that. Like I said, it's big, folks. It's bigger than. It's going to be. We will be in the history books just like the French Revolution within the next couple of years. I promise you. I mean, it's bigger than that. I mean, it won't come to that. I think the law is going to correct itself because it's just such an astronomical issue. But there will be a cleansing and a retooling of our government. We don't need to change the laws. We just need to change the people running the government and make them comply and follow the law that we're funding. Full faith and credit, folks. It's our faith. They are not following our faith. Make them tell everything. This secrecy will only harm the American people in the end, because they will be allowed to hide again. I want the secret. I want exposed all the way up to the top. I want all the systems of banking and international other nations involved in this. I want it to fall. The Tower of Babylon needs to fall, right along with the Whore of Babylon, okay? It needs to come down. The fake ones do. And we need to be done. And people need to understand this is huge. This encompasses the whole world, folks. They are trafficking babies all over the world through systems of state all over the world. Nations are trafficking between babies. There are people within nations and other nations buying babies from other nations. It's disgusting.
Lotus, I want to ask you a quick question before we tune out. And we just got a listener. Lisa is tuning in. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for tuning in and commenting. I appreciate it. I want to ask you, a lot of people are predicting martial law. What is your opinion on that?
I don't think we need martial law. I think it might be a bad idea. I think that would be something that there still is a militia, an organized militia in this country, and there are still men that would come to call for each state, and they're prepared for that. I think that if they had the right person. Martial law has rules, even in the United States, and there are rules to the implementation of martial law, and they are supposed to be locally controlled. And those rules were established before 1950, and there are military codes and regulations on that. And there is no conflict, from what I've read, if they implement them properly, of posse comitatus. But there's been since then there's been the creation of the National Guard. But I would highly suggest if that happens that they work with and not inflame the militias. And the militias have actually been functioning quite well in certain circumstances. And they are very behind Trump. The militias are very behind Trump. And there's a lot of legal things and lawful things that could be done with Trump. We could set aside the Civil War once and for all proper and get rid of these. Exactly. We could definitely return to de jure fairly easily. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's not like we don't know how to recreate these. Look, we set aside these courts because we thought we didn't need them anymore, folks. It's time to bring them back because we have a government that's gone out of hand. And we're more reasoned and logic now, and we have a system of law that allows us, instead of picking up guns, we actually make them follow the law that's there of the people. And that's really all that needs to happen here. So these martial law implementations should only be for when you have toolery, and I'm concerned about that. But if they follow the military codes and regulations and work with the militias, they shouldn't have a problem. They shouldn't have a problem.
What is your opinion about the UN, the United Nations?
Absolutely not.
To Chicago?
There's a that's absolutely not. There are a variety of people who have subject matter and venue jurisdiction well before the United Nations even gets to talk. Because first off, we don't even have to recognize the treaties of the United Nations because they were affected at a de facto government in coup that were affecting baby trafficking rules, okay, trying to perfect like hidden enclaves of minnowing ways of trafficking our babies internationally. I promise you that they're using within the systems of the United Nations that there are things going on there too, okay, because there's too much banking going on. These are banking instruments transacting all over the world.
And I personally feel really violated with the United
Nations. Look, in common law, in the local, here's who has control in the common law: the Shire of the Reef and the local militias.
Well,
and so here's the big
problem going into Chicago, because the United Nations are apparently coming in to Chicago.
Well, okay, you have to understand what they're trying to do with municipalities. They're trying to create. You have to think of cities as beachfronts.
Well, exactly. Why are the United Nations
don't think of them. Think of them.
Whatsoever?
Okay. But you have to think of municipalities. They have tried to create a municipal government. They have tried to create corporate zones where they think that the Constitution does not apply. They think corporatism and corporate overlays override the rules of the Constitution. That's what the attorneys have tried to do. That's called bringing the Admiralty onto the land. It's an unconstitutional act. The land is controlled. I don't care how many counties Chicago sits on. In the counties that the corporate municipality Chicago sits overlays on, because it's a thing. It's a corporate region of commerce. Those people within those commercial regions of Chicago, okay, which is a bonded instrument itself, are not subject to the laws of that commercial instrument, the King of Chicago, more than they are the constitutional rights of the substantial rights that apply to the land. The county shires have surrendered their county authority to the corporate enforcement officers. In common law, that sheriff better remove that and revoke that, and he better start operating and bringing up the militias, or that sheriff needs removed and deemed culpable in the coup, because cops are an extra constitutional invention of the judiciary. By at least the Ohio jurists here, they will admit that they are the army of the judiciary. So if your judiciary is in coup, the cops gotta go. I don't care who you are. If your sheriff doesn't call up, if they go into martial law and your sheriff's not calling up militia and they're sending in national troops or UN troops, you are under a war zone that is unlawful pursuant to the Constitution, and you need to exercise your Second Amendment to establish your substantial rights, because you're being overrun by international interests. That's what I'm going to tell you about blue shirts in Chicago, blue hats in Chicago. They're not authorized under the Constitution.
Folks,
they're not authorized.
You heard it here at the Portholes of Justice.
Because those treaties don't have to be honored. See, we're supposed to honor treaties, okay? We only have to honor treaties in the common law that are de jure. And those ended at the Treaty of Amity and Peace of 1812. That's it, folks. Mm-hmm. And in that, we're not supposed to be warred upon by Britain or the United States. Go read it. In the territories they divided, as long as we're not, as the natives aren't making war against them. We're not making war against them. They're not supposed to be making war against us. They are violating the Treaty of Peace and Amity of 1812, both Britain and the United States, so we can go all the way back there when it comes to who's plenipotentiary, who states we're going to claim. We don't have to honor those treaties.
Regarding Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, these
these are not. Okay, Chicago is not an independent nation.
Lotus,
Chicago,
they are not. They're not an independent nation. And Lotus, I just want to say something. They are openly declaring, okay, that they cannot isolate who these people are.
Okay, then send in the federal. Why are they jumping over the District of Columbia and the United States Corporation?
This is what I'm asking. They're saying that they can't determine who the perpetrators are, so they need a bigger oversight or somebody to come in.
No, they don't. They haven't proved criminal corruption.
Nations. And let me tell you something. This is huge, folks. He
doesn't have the authority the law to call in the United Nations.
It's a really big deal, and I want you to check out Dobby Seven's
Well,
video
I'm going to tell you this: if there is a governor of a municipality,
I think it's a big deal because it opens the gates for the United Nations to come into a lot
the
of
dudes commit treason and sedition. Okay, there is a federalism. All he's doing is assisting the coup of the Bar Union of Illinois to create an enclave of bar union law with their own army of cops, okay? With the UN.
Rahm Emanuel affecting war on the United States, basically.
Well, yeah, essentially. He's decided that Chicago is going to be the beachfront for an international army with blue hats.
Nations to come in.
Okay?
And for them to
He doesn't have that authority. He doesn't have that authority under the Constitution to do that.
What is Trump going to do? He's going to...
I don't know. If I were Trump, I'd make a real quick call to him because I'd probably go arrest him.
But, this is the thing. Anyways, we're way over our 1 hour limit.
We always have to clear the air. We always have to clear the air, friend.
Well, listen,
but it is a big deal. It is a big deal. People should make sure they have guns, and I'm not kidding you, man. If I have a feeling Trump will do something about that, I know I would.
I do. He's all about the people. He's 100% representing.
Well, I love you. I love your listeners. Keep the fire up. Never. What is it? Never surrender. Never forget. I can't remember
Well,
never do it. We're giving it.
It's guests like you that keep my show going, and I think. Live with Lotus.
I definitely have fire in my belly for this because, like I said, I love my
Live with Lotus on the Porthole to Justice, folks. Tune in. We are here we have Lunch with Lotus on Saturdays, and you can go to Lotus Justice YouTube channel. She has Lunch with Lotus on YouTube. You can Google her and look her up, and I encourage you to
watch some educational videos.
Yeah, subscribe to my show. Subscribe to my show on Spreaker.com. You can also download the app to Spreaker. It's absolutely free. I encourage you to do it. Thank you so much, Lotus. I love you.
I love you.
All right. We will we'll have you back on Sunday if you like. If you want to, you can come back on tomorrow.
Maybe. Holler me tomorrow.
All right. Call me up. Love you, girlfriend. Have a great night. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Porthole to Justice. This has been another episode of Porthole to Justice Off the Cuff. Thank you so much for you enlightened human beings that want to know the reality and the truth of where we're at as humanity, and your voice in sharing the content in the Porthole to Justice and the reality of our situation makes waves, and we need you. We need you to share it. All right, guys. Have a great night. Love you.